Hey, welcome in. Well, this is a bit of an update to a story I did a few days ago about Twitter blue checkmarks rushing to blame a certain group of people for what happened in Boulder, the mass shooting there. And it turns out somebody here is facing some consequences. USA Today editor was fired for massive error. Blames, well, what else ever gets blamed these days, right? What's the only thing that anything ever gets blamed on?
What did they hear?
White supremacy. The answer to every question these days, no matter how ridiculous or delusional. Anyway, what do we got here? USA Today's race and inclusion editor. So I think it's safe to say at this point that anybody with a title like that, race and inclusion editor, we can just assume they're a racist, right? We can just assume that immediately. They're obsessed with race and they're obsessed with blaming one particular group of people. That just goes without saying at this point. Anyway, just going to interrupt for 1 second to say if you like this content, subscribe so you can see more. Thanks a lot. This race and inclusion editor was fired last week after using her professional Twitter account to make the ultimately wrong assumption that the man who killed 10 people at a Boulder, Colorado grocery store was white. So to these people, these race and inclusion editor people, they live in a paranoid fantasy, a paranoid delusion. And they know the answer to every question before they've heard the question. And it's always white supremacy. It's always white. White is to blame for everything. So the people with titles like these, like race and inclusion editor, they always know the answer before they've heard the question. Always. It's part of their ideology. It's the foundation of their ideology. So let's see what happened here. What did she do? So she wrote this tweet here. It's always an angry white man, always. This was her response immediately after the events, before anybody actually really knew anything, right? And blue checkmark and USA Today works for the USA Today, not like some obscure blog, right? It's a major news outlet. And it tells you something about the culture in journalism now where she felt free to make a statement like that. She didn't think she was going to get fired, right? If she thought she was going to get fired, she wouldn't have done it. The culture in these institutions is obviously one where they just don't fear saying things. They just don't fear being biased, as long as they're biased in the right direction. Now, it didn't pan out for her this time, but this is one in, a million times where there are no consequences? A million times where a journalist isn't expected to be objective or practice, journalistic integrity or ethics. But anyway, she wrote that in response to another editor, senior editor at Deadspin, who said, quote, extremely tired of people's lives depending on whether a white man with an AR-15 is having a good day or not. Should really look at the FBI statistics on violent crime. It might disabuse you of the notion, although who are we kidding? Facts don't matter to these people, right? Statistics don't matter. What statistics are white supremacy? Objectivity. This is all systems of oppression, right? So who are we kidding? Nothing will convince these people to be decent human beings, I guess, right? And anyway, who was the shooter? Well, the shooter was this guy. So here's what we know about the Boulder, Colorado mass shooting suspect from CNN. So I'm not getting this information from the far right, right? Which is apparently everybody who's not CNN or MSNBC these days, or anybody who doesn't just parrot them. So here's the shooter. Ahmad al-Aliwi Elisa. And what do we know about him? Well, his family emigrated from Syria. Hashtag not all Syrians. So not white, right? Not white. So what actually happened, right? What actually happened? Well, they saw this photo and they went, oh, it's a white guy. Right? Oh, so now we can go to town on this. This is great. This is the message. This is the narrative that we wanted, right? And then they found out, Ahmad. That doesn't sound like Steve or Joe, right? So and then they hastily deleted their tweets. But, for this one editor, at least this one did face some consequences for being a terrible journalist, all right? If you're working for what is supposed to be a legitimate newspaper, you can't make giant mistakes like that. You can't rush out to judgment. Like, there are journalistic standards that you're supposed to hold to. This is somebody who shouldn't be trusted with that position. because of incompetence or bias or whatever it is, not right for the job, right? So here's one case where actually a newspaper, some major organization, is actually at least pretending to have some sort of ethics. And here, this echoes what I'm saying here. The Federalist's Emily Jashinsky explained, quote, "Of course, that amounts to the race and inclusion editor of a major purportedly objective publication getting basic facts about race incorrect on a professional platform in the wake of a mass tragedy. She didn't get facts about the budget wrong as a small-time fashion blogger. She got one major fact directly related to her job wrong on a big story. Again, the race and inclusion editor made the biggest mistake you could probably make in that job. And that's because really what this job is just the racism editor, the far-left indoctrination editor. But anyway, as we know, she had a reason why she was fired, and we already know what that is. It's the same thing every single time. Firing Javeri may have been extreme, but her reaction to getting fired was even worse. In a Medium post, Javeri ripped her former employer and downplayed her transgression by alleging, you know what it is, white supremacy. White supremacy was rampant at USA Today. That's right. That's why they hired a race and inclusion editor. Well, racism, I think, is rampant at the USA Today, but it's not white supremacy. Let's see, quote, "Sending one wrong tweet that ended up in the hands of Sean Hannity." Yeah, it's just one wrong tweet. It was just a little minor mistake, right? It ended up in the hands of Sean Hannity, so he reported on what she did. And that was enough for this publication to turn tail. So making a gigantic mistake that makes her title look like a joke and having it reported by another journalist, yeah, that was enough for her to get fired. Really? Oh, just that? So you gotta love the framing here. Quote, "So many newsrooms claim to value diverse voices, yet when it comes to backing them up or looking deeper into how white supremacy permeates their own newsrooms, they quickly retreat." So her being terrible at her job is white supremacy, I guess. I don't know. Is that what she's saying? Or is it just that she feels she's in a privileged position where she's beyond reproach and beyond consequences for her own incompetence? Or just bias or racism, I call it what you will. I mean, is it that she's just awful? She sounds like a terrible person. Maybe they just got sick of having her around. Maybe they got sick of her accusing everybody of white supremacy all the time over everything. Maybe the staplers are white supremacist staplers. Maybe the coffee machine's a white supremacist coffee machine. Is showing up on time white supremacist? I do believe that they think that now, right? Apparently, punctuality is now covert white supremacy. You don't believe me? I've done videos on this. Apparently, concept of time itself. Again, don't believe me? I've done videos on this. Check them out. Let's see. She went on to claim that insisting racism is everywhere is treated as a bias when, in fact, in her mind, it is a fact. That's the thing, right? These people have been indoctrinated into a lunatic, crackpot racial theory cult. They do think that everything is racist. They think that the coffee maker is racist. That's why you just never see an inkling of self-accountability or just common sense come from these people. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that. Please subscribe, like, and share. That really helps me out. If you'd just like to listen, there's the podcast, Radio Baloney. It's on pretty much every platform. If you look for it, you will find it. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.